Ever feel like there's more going on inside you than you realize? Like hidden signals?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, get ready, because today we're diving deep into something called MOTS-c. It's this tiny molecule, really, but it might hold big keys to fat metabolism, energy use, maybe even aging well.
It's definitely got researchers buzzing. And yeah, for this deep dive, we've looked at studies from, top journals, Cell Metabolism, Nature Communications, Cell Reports, places like that. Serious science.
Right. So our mission today, pretty simple, really. We want to break down what MOTS-c actually is, how science currently thinks it works, what the animal studies show, and some of that is, wow, pretty surprising.
Definitely.
And then, where are we with human research? And crucially, what does all this cutting-edge stuff mean for you, someone tuning in to get up to speed quickly? Okay, let's start there. What is MOTS-c?
Okay, so at its core, MOTS-c is a peptide. That just means it's a small chain of amino acids, only 16 in this case.
Okay, tiny.
Tiny. But here's the really cool part. The instructions, the blueprint for making it. It's not in the cell's nucleus, where most of our genes are. It's actually encoded in our mitochondrial DNA.
Wait, in the mitochondria, the power plant.
Exactly, the power plants. This discovery really shook things up because we mostly thought of mitochondria as just energy factories. But this suggests they're, communicating too, sending out messages.
Huh. So it's like finding a secret transmitter hidden inside the power station.
That's a pretty good analogy, yeah. And MOTS-c isn't alone. It's part of this group called mitochondrial-derived peptides, or MDPs. Think of them as a team of messengers sent out by the mitochondria.
A whole team. Okay.
And MOTS-c doesn't just stay put in the mitochondria. Research, like that key 2015 paper, showed it can actually leave the cell and travel around the body. It acts systemically, almost like a hormone.
So it's made locally, but acts globally, influencing other parts of the body.
Precisely. It can signal to distant tissues and organs.
Okay, that's fascinating. So this traveling messenger, how does it actually exert its influence? What does it do?
Well, one of the main ways seems to be by activating something called AMPK.
AMPK, I've heard of that. It's like a master energy sensor, right?
You got it. AMPK is a major regulator of cellular energy. When MOTS-c activates AMPK, it's like flipping a switch that tells the cell, okay, time to burn fat. It pushes metabolism towards using fatty acids for fuel and away from storing fat.
Ah, so it promotes fat burning over fat storage. That sounds potentially very useful.
Extremely. And the early lab work backs this up. That 2015 study showed that in muscle cells grown in a dish, adding MOTS-c could crank up their fat burning, their oxygen consumption, using fat by up to 40% when fat was available.
40%, just from this peptide.
In those specific conditions, yes. A pretty significant boost in how those cells handled fat.
Okay, wow, that's a clear mechanism. Is that all it does, or are there other ways it works?
No, there seems to be more. Newer research, a study from just this year, 2024, suggests MOTS-c can also bind to another protein called casein kinase 2, or CK2.
CK2, what does that one do?
CK2 is involved in a lot of things, but relevant here, it plays roles in glucose metabolism, how we handle sugar, and also in maintaining muscle. This study suggests the MOTS-c interaction with CK2 helps tissues take up glucose properly and supports muscle function.
So it's not just fat, it's also involved in sugar processing and muscle health. It's getting more complex.
It seems quite multifaceted, yes. But a very important caveat here. Our sources noted that this 2024 CK2 research is still pending full peer review.
Ah, okay. So intriguing finding, but we need to wait for the final scientific thumbs up on that one.
Exactly. Treat it as promising but preliminary for now.
Got it. What about inflammation? That's always linked to metabolic issues.
Right, and that's another area where MOTS-c shows promise. In studies with obese mice, giving them MOTS-c actually lowered levels of some key pro-inflammatory signals, specifically TNF-alpha and IL-6 by over 30%.
Over 30% reduction in inflammation markers.
In those models, yes. It suggests MOTS-c might help protect against that sort of chronic, low-grade inflammation that often comes with metabolic problems. That was reported back in 2020.
Okay, summarizing how it works. It activates the fat-burning AMPK pathway, potentially influences glucose in muscle via CK2 pending review, and seems to have anti-inflammatory effects. That's quite a portfolio for one small peptide.
It really is.
So let's talk about those animal studies. You mentioned some surprising results.
Yeah, some really eye-opening stuff. For example, one study took mice, put them on a high-fat diet, the kind that usually makes them gain a lot of weight.
Right.
They gave these mice MOTS-c, but here's the kicker. They didn't change their high-fat diet. And yet, the MOTS-c treatment reduced their fat accumulation by over 50%.
Wait, over 50% less fat gain without changing the diet,
That's
just
it.
from the MOTS-c.
That's what the study reported, yes. Published in 2020. It's the kind of result in an animal model that really makes researchers sit up and take notice when thinking about potential weight management strategies down the line.
I'll say, that's remarkable. What else have they seen in animals beyond fat?
Well, there's also evidence for bone and muscle protection. Some research used postmenopausal mouse models relevant because bone loss is common after menopause. And in those mice, MOTS-c appeared to help prevent some of that bone density loss. And in separate studies with older mice, it helped preserve their muscle function. These findings came out around 2021.
So potentially helping with age-related decline in bone and muscle too? That touches on healthy aging. Did it make them live longer overall?
Ah, that's a key question. There was a study specifically looking at that in mice that were already quite old, 24 months, which is getting up there for a mouse.
Okay.
Giving them MOTS-c injections actually improved their physical performance. They had better grip strength, could run longer on a treadmill, things like that. So it seemed to improve their health span, the quality of their later life.
But not lifespan.
But in that particular study, it didn't actually extend their overall lifespan. They lived just as long, but seemed healthier during that time. That was reported in 2022.
Okay, health span versus lifespan. That's a really important distinction. Better quality, not necessarily quantity, in that experiment. So these animal results are compelling, but the big question is always, what about humans?
Right. And human research is definitely earlier stage, but we do have some interesting pieces. One study from 2023 looked at what happens to MOTS-c levels when people exercise.
Okay.
They took sedentary adults and had them do high-intensity interval training, or HIOT, and they measured MOTS-c in their blood.
And what happened?
It shot up.
Yeah.
Circulating MOTS-c levels increased, on average, 12-fold during the HII workout.
12 times higher.
12 times. It peaked during the exercise and then stayed elevated for several hours afterwards.
Wow, that's a huge response. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Could this MOTS-c surge be part of why HIIT is so good for metabolic health?
That's exactly the thinking. It strongly suggests that MOTS-c is released in response to intense exercise and might be mediating some of those well-known benefits. It's like your mitochondria are directly responding to that physical stress by sending out this beneficial signal.
That's a really tangible link for people. Exercise boosts this potentially protective peptide.
So if it's this promising, are people trying to turn it into a therapy? Are there clinical trials?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
There is an active phase 3 clinical trial happening right now. It's testing a slightly modified version of MOTS-CSE, an analog in people who have obesity and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
An analog, meaning like a synthetic version.
Essentially, yes. A version designed perhaps to be more stable or effective. This trial is being run by a company called Imperium Bio, and the timeline suggests we might see initial results sometime between 2025 and 2026.
Okay, so first real human trial data might be just a year or two away. That's exciting.
It is. But there are challenges, of course.
Right. You mentioned earlier it breaks down quickly.
That's a major hurdle. The natural form of MOTS-c has a pretty short half-life in the bloodstream. It gets cleared out relatively fast, which makes it tricky to use as a drug where you need sustained levels.
So if you just injected it, it might not stick around long enough to do much good. That's the concern, yes. So researchers are working on ways around that.
Yeah.
Two main strategies. One is creating those stabilized analogs we mentioned, tweaking the amino acid structure slightly, maybe using what are called D-amino acids, to make it more resistant to being chewed up by enzymes in the body.
Making the molecule itself tougher.
Exactly. The other approach is delivery systems, using things like nanoparticles, tiny little carriers to encapsulate the MOTS-c, protect it while it circulates, and maybe even help deliver it more effectively to target tissues. There was research on this nanoparticle approach published back in 2022.
Okay, so either make the messenger stronger or give it an armored car. Makes sense.
Right.
All right, let's try to pull this all together. For you listening, what are the key takeaways from this deep dive into MOTS-c?
Okay, number one, based on current human data, it really looks like intense exercise, specifically HIIT, is the best known natural way to significantly boost your own MOTS-c levels.
So exercise is key. Got it.
Number two, and this is crucial, MOTS-c is not currently a therapy. The animal results are exciting, yes, but they don't always translate to humans. We need those clinical trial results.
Right. Temper expectations. It's still research.
Definitely. But number three, the field is incredibly promising. The fact that mitochondria can send out these signals that affect metabolism, inflammation, maybe even aspects of aging,
Yeah.
that's a huge shift. And if scientists can crack the code on stabilizing and delivering MOTS-c or its analogues effectively,
Then we might see actual therapeutic uses down the road.
it's certainly possible in the coming years. It's a very active area.
Absolutely. So wrapping up, this tiny peptide, born from our mitochondrial DNA, is turning out to be a surprisingly powerful player in health. It really drives home the point that mitochondria are so much more than just energy factories. They're dynamic communicators.
Couldn't agree more. Unlocking these mitochondrial signals like MOTS-c opens up really exciting avenues for thinking about health and longevity.
So remember that steady conclusion. Stay active. Your mitochondria are listening. Let's take that a step further. A final thought for you to consider. How many other silent conversations are happening inside your cells right now, influenced by your daily choices? And what breakthroughs are waiting just around the corner in understanding these mitochondrial messages? Breakthroughs that could reshape how you approach your own health journey through aging. Something to think about.